So there's been a solid rush of novels about menopause. I'm thinking of Sandwich by Catherine Newman or All Fours by Miranda July. But we haven't had new TV shows about it. Now we do. A new sitcom called Small Achievable Goals. The group chat has seen it. They have thoughts. Let's go. I'm Elamin Abdelmahmoud, and this is Commotion. Look, Small Achievable Goals introduces you to two women who are very different and making a podcast together. You have Chris. She's a flighty makeup influencer who likes to hug strangers. And then you have Julie, who's a self-serious, award-winning podcast producer. And they sound like this.
So, how do we turn your TikToks into a podcast? What I was thinking was
that? Sorry, go ahead.
Okay. This show is about the history, psychology.
Sorry, but the show's about makeup.
The sociology of beauty.
Guess what I just died of?
Boredom.
Bingo.
The thing that brings them together is they are at an age where it feels like their bodies are rebelling and they want to talk about these changes and what it feels to be moving through perimenopause. Catherine Hernandez and Teri Hart are both here to talk about this show. Catherine, Teri, welcome to the show, friends.
Hello.
Hello. What a delight to have both of you, first of all, can I just say. Catherine, I'm going to start with you. Listen, how did you feel watching the first few episodes of Small Achievable Goals?
Ooh, well, it's ironic. It's called Small Achievable Goals because it's quite the feat putting this kind of content on television.
Yes.
As a TV writer, I know firsthand the uphill battle it is to convince networks about the commercial viability of these kinds of stories. And my first thought was, please let this pave the way for more content about women's bodies and the bodies of anyone who has a uterus. Like, I'm so jazzed about it that I'm having like a hot flash. Like right now, I'm having a hot flash.
That's the right level of jazz to be about a show if you're going to be jazzed about a show. I mean, honestly, like, it is funny from the first frame to me, Teri. Like, it's like the first moment that you meet these two women on the street, and then their relationship evolves. But let's get into it. This is a show about creative women in the entertainment industry. That is also both of you. I wonder if there's an example of a moment that maybe really resonated with you, Teri.
Yeah, I think that, that B story is really supports the A story in the fact that they're in transition everywhere in their life. Like, it's not just their bodies that are transitioning, but the world is asking them to be different also. It's not just enough for Chris to be a TikToker. She has to transition into also being a podcaster, something she's never been before. It's not enough that Julie is an award-winning podcast producer of serious material. That doesn't sell anymore, so she gets relegated to producing Chris's, as we heard, not so serious podcast. And I think that, that is what happens. That is, yes, we're dealing with perimenopause in Small Achievable Goals, but we're also dealing with ageism. And that is not only unique to women. I think that the world asks people to transition. And I think that's kind of if some men are listening to this and saying like, perimenopause, what? I don't want to know about that. That doesn't affect me. Well, A, it does affect you. And B, it's not just about that. It is about all kinds of transitions into our kind of third act of life.
I also got to say, like, Teri, like, for you, as you sort of like mention all these transitions, I'm thinking of like your career, about like the ways that covering entertainment has entailed different things over the last 20 years or so, over the last 15 years or so. Is, like, here's a new platform, go master it. That's where the audience is. And it's just kind of like repeatedly that over and over again.
Yeah, I've avoided dancing on TikTok so far, but I am not ruling it out.
I think you'd be great at it. Just saying, if you want to be, I think you'd be great at it.
For it to happen.
Catherine, let me ask you the same question about the idea of, this is a show about women in the creative industry. What are some of the examples from the show that are maybe resonating with you?
Well, there's a scene where Chris, she's dealing with abnormal bleeding during a photo shoot, and wardrobe only has a rack full of white outfits for her to wear. And that really, the only way I can describe it is that it really hit me in the emotional gonads. Like, what we do to hide what is stigmatized, especially in the entertainment industry, just so that we can do our jobs. It's absurd. Okay. I recently worked as a showrunner, and every time the director called cut, I had to run outside to feel the cold air on my face. And at first I pretended that I was just getting something outside. And then I gave I was honest. I'm like, I'm go Flash. And because I was like, why lie? Why am I lying? Like, my changing body is nothing to be ashamed about.
I think like the idea of feeling like you have to sort of like contort yourself in order to lie, and then saying, hang on, no, you need to sort of like make that a bit more explicit. Like that's the entire arc of the first episode of the show. Also, Teri, go ahead. You look like you were ready to say something.
I grew up in a time, yeah, because I mean, it's been so fascinating for me as a woman to see all the period positivity that's out there for younger girls now. Like, shed it from the rooftops, you have your period. Versus when I was coming of age, I don't think people still say that anymore. But, you know, the whole thing was camouflaging pads and tampons. So they had flowers and stuff, and they had their special case that nobody knew you were even carrying it. So, I mean, the period positivity has changed around women's bodies. Now let's try to do the same thing. And I think Small Achievable Goals is doing that, maybe hence the title. It works on many different levels of talking about perimenopause and what then leads us to a postmenopausal life.
I don't think it's an accident that the first episode of the show is called Judy Bloomed. You know, like the very, like just like as far as episodes go. Okay, I want people to hear a little bit more of how the show tackles the humor in perimenopause.
Prepare to be amazed. Don't blink. Chris, this will happen fast.
Hello? Does that appointment time work?
Sharon? Sharon?
Hello?
Hello? Sharon, do I have a doctor's appointment?
Please don't shout. Does Wednesday the 16th at 3 work for you? If not, we have availability next year.
No, next week works fine. Thank you. Oh my gosh, thank you.
Catherine, that is a running joke in the show, how impossible it feels to get a doctor's appointment to just like look at perimenopause symptoms. How did the show's comedy land for you as you started like building that scaffolding?
Oh, it landed.
Okay. Get in there.
Someone who has been both Chris. So I've both been Chris with abnormal bleeding. And I've been Julie with her hormonal swings, like after having 2 surgeries done. And I caught myself screaming at the television, like, baby, and yes, of course, like any day I get to see Meredith go off into bonkers slapstick land is like a day. That's a day worth living, right? But standing ovation to the writers' rooms for crafting these scenes that crescendoed into the realm of rageful tears. Because to be seen, have our collective pain acknowledged, it feels like a triumph.
I think the idea of a show like this feeling like a triumph, that's what a show like this is trying to do. Like, it has to sort of connect on that emotional level, as Catherine mentioned, the emotional gonads. That's sort of where it has to kind of hit you. Teri, when we think about the comedic stylings in the show, Catherine just mentioned Meredith. She's referring to Meredith McNeil. This is a show created by Meredith McNeil and Jennifer Whalen, both alum of Baroness von Sketch. How does their sketch show style of comedy end up translating to Small Achievable Goals?
Yeah, and like preach Baroness von Sketch, like groundbreaking. Go and watch it if you haven't, because it's so great.
Absolutely.
And for sure, there are comedic set pieces here that drive the plot forward. And I think you can tell, especially in that first episode, that it's very sketch influenced. But I was lucky enough to see the first 3 episodes, and it does settle into more of a sitcom style as we go through it. Less sketch, more sitcom. And I think that's going to be its sweet spot. I think that humanizing of this, that less broad comedy is going to serve these characters and their situation well and make it all the more relatable.
I like a show that is sort of like discovering what the show is as it goes. You know, the idea of, you know, you build the show and you think, actually, we're building a sketch show, and then like a few episodes in, you're like, actually, this feels like much more like a sitcom mechanics would work better for these characters. Maybe Catherine, I'll kick this to you. We're only a couple episodes in. Were there any in the show that sort of like, oh, I don't know if you landed that, maybe kind of fell a little bit short for you?
Well, you know, again, speaking as a screenwriter, you know, we can always do better when it comes to diversity on screen. And there are I feel like the show had many more opportunities to have principal roles filled with folks of different races and disabilities. And it's always a good reminder to fellow artists that these folks exist. They deserve to take up more time on screen with more depth, other than simply upholding the storylines of mainly white characters or being seen as a threat. So if the healthcare system can fail Chris, imagine how it fails racialized, disabled, and trans folks, right? So my fingers are crossed to see that more as a season unfolds.
What about you, Teri? Anything that you're like, I wish you'd spent a bit more time on this, or this didn't quite land for me?
I think that they're hitting a lot of really, really good places. And I was really enjoying, as I got into episode 3, how it settled into that sitcom vibe more than the really broad sketch stuff. I think that the broad sketch stuff can be a little bit of like, yes, I see that, and I'm glad it's there, but that's not exactly my experience. Where I think we can do a show about perimenopause, and I think Small Achievable Goals can get there. That is really grounded in reality and still very, very funny, because these two women are hilarious and the characters are very, very good where they're headed.
I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier, Teri, the idea that we're sort of seeing a bit more period positivity in media right now. When you think of like the examples of this working, and what are sort of some examples that are kind of like sticking in your mind? Because I mentioned off the top, in the open, like these couple of novels. There's Sandwich by Catherine Newman. There's All Fours by Miranda July, which was like a pretty often talked about book last year or so. And I'm just kind of curious if you're, where else you're looking to say, you know what, this is kind of working for me.
I mean, what I think I'm seeing mostly is TV shows that have more mature and senior people in them. So I think that so we're seeing things like Hacks, we're seeing things like Only Murders in the Building, Man on the Inside. These are all TV shows that have people in their twilight years, and we never used to, I mean, we've all seen that meme go around of the actual age of the Golden Girls versus the age they were playing and what they look like. And the fact is, people who are in their 50s now started their careers in the 90s. I'm sorry, that's going to offend some people. It offends me because I'm one of them. But, the fact is, Golden Girls, I'm 53 years old. I don't look like Blanche. Like, I don't think I do. And my experience is different. So I think that we're seeing the people who are now making television make stories about older people. And I have to say, it's where the audience is. Like, my nephews are sitting down and watching YouTube. I still sit down and turn my TV on to watch television, as do most of my contemporaries. So the business is to make television shows for the people who are watching television. And I think that those are more mature, older people like me.
So I got to tell you, as someone who, born in 88, grew up on, 90s and early 2000s media, the way that just forget your 40s, just your 30s were represented on television as like, once you get to your 30s, that is all of life determined forever.
Especially women.
Especially women in that period of time. Like 100%, so much of the media made in that period of time sort of like told a story that like, okay, once you get to this part, you have no more stories to tell. And then you kind of get to this period of time right now where it feels like everything we do is a rebellion against this. And Catherine, I mentioned earlier the idea, like the first episode of the show is called Judy Bloomed. That's, of course, after Judy Blume, who wrote a lot about coming of age and puberty. And like there's something about the show and its framing of a coming of age tale about perimenopause and menopause. How is that framing landing for you? The idea that actually like you don't just get one coming of age, you get multiple of them throughout your life. And this is a show that is like trying to maybe bridge that gap. We're trying to say, you should not limit the idea of a coming of age only to your teens, because that is actually like an absurd way to think about life.
Well, most definitely, it feels like for many of us of this age is that we're still trying to figure ourselves out. But for me, I feel like I've arrived for myself. Like, personally, I feel strong. I feel amazing. But I feel like this is like the kind of content that we need right now on our screen, since mainstream media has traditionally been so far like really hyper focused on people who are supposedly in the prime of their lives, right? And as we see more mature folks on screen, as Teri was mentioning, it's this bizarre fiction of invincibility, as if aging doesn't change you. Like we're seeing people like, characters having like they're wrinkle free, they're having painless sex, they're not wearing reading glasses, I know that there are countless middle-aged people out there wondering like what is normal about their changing bodies, like when to ask for help, what to accept, what to love, what to scream about. And I feel that the show offers us a chance to laugh at ourselves while also like, normalizing icing our necks that kind of thing.
I mean, I gotta say, like, I think the first event that we ever did together, Catherine, you sort of very proudly and beautifully said, I am so proud to be an elder. Like, that's something that, like, for you,
Yes.
you sort of cherish as a part of your own sort of idea of yourself. And so to see, I think, like a show like this coming into being like, and this is how you reckon with some of the changes that happened in that period of time, without it being in conflict, right? Without it being saying like, without it being sort of some kind of idea of conflict is, I think, a really beautiful thing. So I really appreciate your insight. I really appreciate both of you guys being here. Thank you for your time. This has been a delight. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Of course. Talk to you guys soon. Teri Hart, entertainment reporter at Super Channel. Catherine Hernandez is the author of the book Scarborough and the screenwriter of the film adaptation of the same name. By the way, Small Achievable Goals is streaming right now on CBC Gem.
Wow, fantastic, baby.
I'm Elamin Abdelmahmoud, and this is Commotion. That is a K-pop classic, Fantastic Baby by the group Big Bang. G-Dragon, the leader of Big Bang, has a new solo album out. It is his first album in 7 years. To talk about GD's comeback, Bina Lee's here. Bina, it is nice to have you back on the show, friend. How's it going?
Thank you for having me, Elamin.
Yes, of course.
I am getting over a little bit of a cold, so excuse me if I do randomly cough, but
Totally
I'm doing okay.
We welcome you and your cold. We appreciate your wisdom. Thank you for coming on the show. Let's get right into it. Okay, but before we get to the new album, maybe let's give a bit of context here. How influential is G-Dragon as a K-pop idol? Why is he a big deal?
Okay, so first and foremost, he consistently makes great music, which is important.
That helps.
And it helps, right? And he's known to produce and write his own music, which a lot of K-pop idols back in the day weren't doing. When G-Dragon was really big and Big Bang, it was like around the 2010s. They weren't doing this. K-pop idols weren't doing this, but he would also make music and lyrics that weren't just about love and like relationships, but he also touched on politics and social issues in his songs and music videos. So yeah, a lot of groups weren't doing this at the time, and G-Dragon kind of paved the way for it. Another reason why he's a big deal is he is a fashion icon and a trendsetter. He became a global ambassador for Chanel in 2016, and he also founded his own fashion company many years ago called Peace Minus One. And he designs these shoes. I know he did a collab with Nike as well, and they've become like famous among celebrities all over the world.
Bina, I know we just talked about aging on the show, but when you said back in the day and then you said 2010, I did have this moment of like, my soul left my body. But also, I think that's, you said back in the day, way back in the ancient days of 2010.
You thought I was going to say like 90s or 80s or something?
Not even.
No.
I 40s. That's back in the day to me. But it's fine. When you say back in the day, I think like it's useful to contextualize it. Like we are currently in the 5th generation of K-pop, and Big Bang and G-Dragon are from the 2nd generation. That's a sort of stretch time period of like 2001 to 2011ish. Is it normal for a 2nd generation K-pop idol to have this kind of longevity to the point where you get to this moment and say, back in the day? Like is that normal?
So to put it simply, no.
Okay.
It's not normal. It's not usual. A lot of the idols, the 2nd gen idols, have branched off to do their own thing. A lot of them have become actors, and they're like in movies and Korean dramas and stuff. There are very, very little exceptions who put out music and are touring right now and promoting. SHINee is a big example, but yes, it's very, very rare. So the fact that G-Dragon even has been in the industry for this long and continues to release music, it's huge. And actually, recently I saw this G-Dragon clip, and he was talking about his comeback with a friend of his, and he mentions that before, way back when, he was a younger K-pop artist. His fans used to like, they were all screaming over him and yelling because, they're big fans, and they're like, "Oppa, oppa sarage," which means like, "I love you" in Korean in like an endearing way. But now he said he's noticed his fans come up to him and they like shake his hand and they thank him for coming back. They're like, "Thank you for making more music." And like, so it's this feeling of just being very, very grateful that he's back.
That's a beautiful evolution, I think. That's a really good way to put it. Is it common, would you say? I think because we've seen a lot of K-pop groups have solo art, like basically members of K-pop groups sort of put out their own solo work, and it goes relatively well for most of them. But when you think about GD's solo work and the relationship of it to his sound with Big Bang, are they different sounds? Like, is he doing something different with his solo work?
Yeah, so he does. It is very different because he produces and writes all of his solo albums. He has a very big hand in it. With Big Bang, there's a lot of support from his other members who also produce and write, and also whatever the company he was in at the time, which was Teddy Park way back when. He was known for co-producing massive hits with GD, so he did have a lot more support. But his solo albums, and this particular one, is very much like only him. And there are also what's interesting about G-Dragon is it's definitely a reflection of who he is. It's like a journal and what he's thinking at the particular time. He has a concept and theme whenever he comes out with an album. Literally everything from start to finish, it connects, and he has a vision for it.
I'm gonna disregard the fact that you said way back when so many times, just in that answer. Let's hear some more new music from G-Dragon.
Check it out, you do what it do. Tick it tock and I move. Booty now, you do. Me do be chat. Beautiful. Such a so much good. Like it. Such a good much good. Get some to today. Get some more to get. Damn, that good, baby girl. Too bad for me. That's Too Bad. GD featuring Anderson .Paak from G-Dragon's new album Ubermensch. Bina, when you heard the song, what'd you think?
So the music video dropped right when his album came out.
Yeah.
And I think it was a worthwhile song to drop his album with. The song officially now, found out, is a certified perfect all kill, which is a term that is used in Korea. It basically means that the song has reached #1 across all of the music charts, every single one. And what I love personally about the song is that it feels very much like the GD that we know and are familiar with. The song is so catchy. I can get why it's a hit right now. It's a feel good, fun song. I even saw you, Elamin, kind of bobbing your head to it.
I was like, yeah, let's go. Yeah.
And also the music video is obviously done so well. The choreography is amazing. And people are saying, the buzz online is that this album was definitely worth the wait because us fans, we've waited for 7 long years.
When I think about this idea of waiting for an artist who you've sort of known and had for some time, and have been used to them exploring certain sounds, and then they kind of come back and they're exploring different sounds. Sometimes that doesn't go well, right? Sometimes sometimes it kind of falls flat. I'm thinking here of I don't know, Katy Perry. 2010 Katy Perry could not miss. Every single thing was a hit. 2025 Katy Perry, not connecting so much. We talked earlier about how hard it is for older K-pop idols to put out music and still sort of stay relevant. Do you think this new album is going to keep G-Dragon in the conversation?
Absolutely. I honestly think G-Dragon can do no wrong, but this album overall has got such a good mix of GD. It's so eclectic, so you really won't be bored listening to it. There's some songs that hit with a lot of depth and emotion. Dream is an example of one of them. Then you get songs like Too Bad and Power that are more fun and hard hitting. I think that this album shows that he's very relevant. He's proven that he's still able to produce these chart-topping songs, and he's still got that star power and quality. This was shown. He did a performance recently at Mama. For those of you who don't know, Mama is a year-end music awards show in Asia. It's kind of like the Grammys. It's huge, and he did a performance and knocked it out of the park. He killed it. But yeah, I feel like overall his music in general is just so meaningful to me because every time I hear a Big Bang or a GD song, coming up on my shuffle, and it kind of takes me back to certain parts of my life just because I've been a fan for so long. And I can understand that feeling of gratefulness, the story that I told you earlier, because he's continuing to release new music, and this only means that I can continue on this journey with him throughout my life. So yeah, he's that's special to me. I'm a huge fan.
Yeah, I do think like it's so perfectly illustrated with this idea of, transitioning from screaming at someone because you're their fan to going over to shake their hand, but there's still sort of love and admiration that transitions over generations. That love is still there, just sort of presents itself in a different way. Bina, I appreciate your time. I appreciate your thoughts. Thank you for coming on the show today. Thank you, friend.
Thank you so much for having me, Elamin.
Yes, of course. Anytime. Bina Lee is an entertainment writer in Toronto. She writes for the English language Korean pop culture website Soompi. That is it for the podcast today. My name is Elamin Abdelmahmoud. This show is called Commotion. By the way, you can find us on YouTube. Like, you can literally just watch this entire conversation. We're on Instagram at Commotion CBC. This show will be back tomorrow, and I would love to see you then.